In the murky waters of Burundi's Ruzizi River, something massive lurked beneath the surface, something the locals feared more than anything else in their daily lives. They called him Gustave. Not just a crocodile, a monster, a relic of a time when creatures ruled without question. This wasn't some blurry legend whispered around campfires. Gustave was real, and he's been accused of doing what no other crocodile has done on this scale, killing as many as 300 people. He was first spotted decades ago, and even now, stories of his brutal strength ripple through the region like the wake of his massive tail. Gustave isn't your average crocodile. Experts estimate he's over 20 feet long and weighs around a ton, easily one of the largest Nile crocodiles ever documented. His size alone makes him nearly untouchable in the wild. Even other apex predators give him a wide berth. Hunters, they've tried. Bullets have reportedly bounced off his thick, scarred hide. He carries the proof, marks, dents, and a body built like armor. Wildlife experts from across the world descended on Burundi to study and capture him. The most famous effort came from French filmmaker Patrice Fay, who dedicated years to tracking the beast. Cameras were placed, traps were set, but Gustave outsmarted every attempt. He even avoided a steel cage baited with a live goat twice. It's as if he knew, as if he was watching them, not the other way around. No one knows exactly how old Gustave is. Some believe he could be more than 60 years old, and while he hasn't been officially seen in recent years, there's no confirmation he's dead. In fact, locals still report sightings now and then, always at a distance, always with a chilling sense of certainty. You don't confuse a crocodile like that with anything else. What makes Gustave so terrifying isn't just his size, it's the intelligence, the precision, the complete disregard for fear. Most crocs go for easy prey. Gustave goes for people. He doesn't sneak through swamps, he charges. Witnesses say he once pulled an adult bull into the water without even slowing down. That kind of power is nearly unmatched in the animal kingdom. So when people say crocodiles are dangerous, they're not wrong, but Gustave takes it to a level most of us can't even grasp. If you're anywhere near the Ruzizi River, remember this name. He might not be a myth. He might just be waiting. If Gustave was a monster of the rivers, then the forests of northern India once had a nightmare of their own, the Champawat tiger. This wasn't just any big cat. This was the deadliest tiger ever recorded, and not because of speculation or hearsay. Official records tie her to over 430 human deaths. That's not an exaggeration, that's a number that forced governments to act. Villages emptied out, schools closed, people refused to walk outside during daylight. This tigress didn't hunt in shadows, she hunted with confidence. What made her so lethal wasn't just her aggression, but her adaptation. She had injuries to her jaw, broken canines that made hunting deer or boar nearly impossible. So she turned to the one prey that couldn't outrun her and didn't expect and attack people. She learned human routines, stalked paths between villages, even followed footsteps. Survivors described her as fast, silent, and terrifyingly precise. She would attack, vanish, and come back the next day. She wasn't fleeing human activity, she was thriving in it. British hunter Jim Corbett eventually tracked and shot her in 1907, but even he was shaken by how intelligent and fearless she was. Her body showed signs of old wounds, bullets, and battles, and yet she had outlived them all. Corbett later wrote that she had no fear of man whatsoever, and that's what made her so chilling. This wasn't a case of territorial defense or provocation. This was a big cat that learned how to hunt people, and did it better than anyone ever recorded. The idea that one animal could cause that much fear, shutting down entire districts and forcing militarized hunts, shows how dangerous predators can become when their instincts change just slightly. And what's more chilling is that she wasn't the only one of her kind to develop that behavior. Just like the Champawat tiger adapted to hunt people in Uganda, something similar happened, but with a creature even heavier and far more unexpected. His name was Osama, and he wasn't a cartoonish, slow-moving tank of an animal like many imagine hippos to be. He was violent, fast, and lethal. And he didn't just kill once. Reports say this single hippo was responsible for at least a dozen human deaths over a short stretch of time, and maybe more that were never officially documented. It started around Lake Kyoga, where locals noticed a pattern: fishermen disappearing boats found overturned, and footprints the size of dinner plates near water sources. Osama didn't just attack when provoked. Witnesses say he would wait near landing areas and strike without warning. One man survived an attack and later said the hippo capsized his boat and bit through it like paper, dragging him underwater. Hippos can run faster than most people expect and can crush bone with a single bite. Now picture one over 4,000 pounds that seems to actively seek out humans. That was Osama. Locals were so terrified they gave him a name normally reserved for villains, and that tells you how real the threat felt. This wasn't a wild animal that strayed into human territory, it was one that seemed to learn how to exploit it. After years of chaos, Osama was eventually tracked and killed by wildlife officials, but even that wasn't easy. He had already escaped several attempted captures. The animal was cunning, avoiding boats and traps like he knew exactly what was happening. What's especially disturbing is that Osama wasn't alone in his behavior. Hippo attacks in Africa are more common than most people realize, and they're often more deadly than those by lions or crocodiles. But Osama took it to another level, becoming for a time the most feared creature on the lakes of Uganda. If you thought tigers were terrifying, wait until you hear about a leopard that turned into one of the most methodical killers in human history. This wasn't a chance encounter or a freak attack. The leopard of Rudraprayag stalked villages in northern India for nearly a decade, killing over 125 people, confirmed. That number alone makes it one of the most prolific man-eaters ever documented. But what made this leopard even more frightening wasn't the count, it was how he did it. Most leopards avoid humans, keeping to forests and mountains. Not this one. He adapted to life near villages. He'd strike at night, slipping into homes through windows and dragging people out without a sound. Families would wake up to find someone missing. Doors remained locked, lights were kept on, but nothing stopped him. He learned patterns, avoided traps, and slipped through search teams like smoke. He seemed invisible. Some even believed he was supernatural, a phantom with claws. Jim Corbett, the same man who took down the Champawat tiger, was eventually brought in to track this killer too. It took months. The leopard was elusive, suspicious of any changes to his surroundings, and unafraid of human scent. Even Corbett wrote that this animal was unnervingly intelligent, cautious, and impossible to predict. When he was finally brought down in 1926, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like surviving something that had no business existing in the first place. And here's the twist. This leopard's killing spree likely began after an outbreak and famine that left many bodies unburied. Scavenging turned into habit, and habit turned into hunting. Once again, a predator learned something new, and hundreds paid the price. It's not the size that matters most. Sometimes, it's the mind behind the claws. From the stealth of leopards to raw, crushing force, now enter Lolong. Captured in the Philippines, this crocodile didn't just break records, he shattered them. Lolong was over 20 feet long and weighed more than 2,300 pounds. When locals first spotted him, they didn't see a legend. They saw an actual monster, dragging livestock and possibly people into the river. There were stories, a water buffalo vanishing, a fisherman who never came home, a child gone in seconds. Nothing confirmed, but enough fear to start a hunt. The operation to capture Lolong was massive. Traps failed. Boats followed him for days. He avoided everything until finally he was cornered and hauled out of the swamp with a team of nearly 100 people. When they finally measured him, jaws dropped. He was the largest saltwater crocodile ever caught alive, and even in chains he looked prehistoric. Scars across his body, teeth the size of fingers, and eyes that didn't blink. Authorities believed he was behind several disappearances, though they never officially found human remains. Still, no one doubted he could have done it. One bite from Lolong could snap a grown man in half. He was moved to an ecotourism park where thousands came to see him, but despite being in captivity, he never lost that wild energy. He rarely ate in public, didn't move much, and always looked like he was waiting for something. Lolong died in 2013, but people still talk about him. Not just because of his size, but because of the possibility. The idea that somewhere out there, other giants like him are still hiding in mangroves and rivers, unseen but always watching. You know, it's easy to forget that killer whales are apex predators when you're watching them do tricks in a theme park. But Tilikum, well, he reminded the world of what they truly are: deadly, intelligent, and unpredictable. Captured off the coast of Iceland in the 1980s, Tilikum became, without a doubt, one of the most notorious marine animals in history. Over the years he was involved in the deaths of 3 people, including an experienced SeaWorld trainer. This wasn't just a case of misunderstood behavior. This was an orca that had seen too much. Tilikum spent most of his life in captivity, shuffled between tanks, isolated, and used for breeding. Orcas are social animals, you see. They form complex relationships, communicate across miles, and in the wild, they swim up to 100 miles a day. In captivity, however, Tilikum swam in circles, sometimes floating motionless for hours. Trainers said he was intelligent but moody, and well, when things went wrong, they went fatally wrong. The most publicized case, you might recall, happened during a live show when Tilikum grabbed his trainer and refused to let go. It shocked the audience. It shocked the world. Suddenly, the smiling orca was seen as something else entirely, an animal that had been pushed too far for too long. He wasn't rabid or crazed, no, he was calculated. What makes Tilikum's story so unsettling is that orcas are capable of strategy. They hunt seals by creating waves. They tip over ice floes, they teach their young. And in Tilikum's case, he remembered, that's what made him so dangerous. Not just his size, which was massive even by orca standards, but his memory. In 1898, as the British pushed forward with their Grand Railway project in Kenya, they ran into something they didn't expect, two lions that completely derailed the operation. These weren't just hungry predators picking off stragglers. The Tsavo man-eaters, two massive male lions, began stalking the construction camps and dragging people out of tents at night. They didn't hunt for survival, they hunted relentlessly, reportedly killing dozens of workers, maybe over 100 by some accounts. What made these lions so terrifying wasn't just their aggression, it was their boldness. They weren't afraid of campfires or noise. They ignored barriers, leapt over fences and learned to evade traps set by experienced hunters. Night after night, workers vanished. The camps emptied. Construction ground to a halt. People started calling them demons. These weren't typical lions with a natural fear of humans. They were targeting people like prey. And here's the twist. Both lions were maneless, an unusual trait that added to their eerie look and helped them move silently through the brush. The lead engineer, Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson, eventually hunted them down after months of failed attempts. When he finally killed them, the relief was so great that the British got the railway back on track almost immediately. But the story didn't end there. The skins were later turned into rugs, and eventually, the reconstructed lions were put on display in a museum in Chicago. Their skulls showed extreme dental issues, which likely pushed them toward easier prey, humans. Once again, an injury shifted behavior, and the result was a bloodbath that nearly stopped an empire's progress in its tracks. Thousands of miles from Africa, deep in the snowy forests of Hokkaido, Japan, another predator left its mark in one of the most horrifying wildlife attacks in modern history. In December 1915, a massive brown bear descended on the tiny village of Sankabetsu. What followed wasn't a single attack, it was a sustained assault that left residents terrified to even step outside. The bear tore through homes, returned again and again, and killed 7 people in total, shaking the entire country to its core. Brown bears in Japan aren't rare, but this one was different. It showed no fear, no hesitation, and no pattern that locals could predict. It came in the middle of a snowstorm when visibility was low and help was far away. The bear not only broke into homes, it dragged people out. Entire families fled the village in panic. Those who stayed behind armed themselves with whatever they could find, axes, rifles, even boiling water. Search parties were formed, but they kept arriving too late. The bear would vanish into the woods only to return days later, targeting homes where lights had gone out. The animal seemed to understand how to avoid traps and how to catch people when they were most vulnerable. It wasn't a one-time rampage, it was a calculated siege. Eventually, an expert hunter known for tracking rogue bears was called in. He found the animal and shot it after a dangerous encounter in the mountains. The bear's stomach contents included human remains, confirming what villagers feared most. It had developed a taste for people. The Sankabetsu incident led to major changes in how rural communities in Japan dealt with wildlife threats, and it remains a chilling case that's still taught in Japanese schools today. Between 1764 and 1767, the rural province of Gévaudan in southern France lived under the shadow of something no one could fully explain. People called it la bête, the beast. Witnesses said it was larger than a wolf, with reddish fur, black streaks, a long tail, and a strange, almost human-like stare. Over 100 people were killed, often in brutal, sudden attacks that terrified isolated villages. Soldiers were dispatched. Hunters scoured the forests, rewards were posted. Still, the attacks continued. This wasn't a case of one unlucky encounter. The beast kept returning. It stalked shepherds, ambushed farmers, and even charged into groups of armed men. Some who survived said it walked on all fours but moved unnaturally fast. It didn't behave like a typical wolf. Reports poured in from across the region. Some bodies were untouched except for a clean, fatal wound. Some were never found at all. Panic turned into paranoia. Locals blamed everything from escaped exotic animals to supernatural curses. Even whispers of werewolves started to spread. Multiple wolves were killed over those years, and some were claimed to be the beast. But the killings only stopped after a large animal was finally shot by a local hunter named Jean Chastel. It had unusual features, and strange remains were reportedly found in its stomach. Whatever it was, the attack stopped. To this day, no one agrees on what the beast really was. A deformed wolf, a lion brought from overseas, or something no one had seen before. What made the beast so feared wasn't just the body count, it was the mystery, the precision, the feeling that it was hunting not for survival, but for sport. 300 years later, it still haunts French folklore, and not without reason. In the river systems of Bangladesh, people are used to sharing the water with crocodiles, but they don't expect the slender-snouted gharial to be among the dangerous ones. Usually seen as fish-eaters with no real threat to humans, gharials are a rare species that tend to keep to themselves. But in the early 2000s, that calm was shattered by a massive individual some locals called the Gavial Devourer, and unlike its cousins, this one acted very differently. Stories began to spread from villages along the Brahmaputra and Jamuna rivers, livestock vanishing near the water, fishing boats found overturned, and in a few cases, people disappearing without a trace. What made it even stranger was that the footprints found nearby didn't match those of a saltwater crocodile. They were narrower, likely from a gharial. At first, wildlife experts dismissed the idea. Gharials don't attack people. But eyewitnesses were certain. This wasn't a croc. It was longer, faster, and had a snout like a spear. Eventually, photographs surfaced showing an enormous gharial basking near a commonly used riverside path. It had scars on its back, likely from fishing nets or boat blades, and was estimated to be over 20 feet long. Locals believed it had grown aggressive after repeated run-ins with humans. Wildlife officials launched a search, but by the time they set up cameras and patrols, the animal had vanished. Whether it died, moved upstream, or simply changed behavior again, remains unknown. To this day, the story divides people. Some still insist gharials are harmless. Others swear the devourer was real. But one thing is clear. When even the species considered safe starts changing how it interacts with us, the rules of the wild shift in a big way. In the green hills and villages of Assam, India, elephants are part of daily life. People respect them, often revere them, but that relationship turns deadly when a bull elephant goes rogue. Between 2004 and 2006, one such elephant made headlines across the country for all the wrong reasons. This tuskless bull wasn't just aggressive, it was merciless. By the end of its rampage, over 60 people were dead. It started with isolated incidents, a trampled crop here, a damaged hut there, but soon the attacks escalated. Entire homes were flattened, granaries destroyed, and villagers crushed in their sleep. The elephant began showing up at dusk and returning night after night. Even more chilling, it reportedly avoided towns where security forces were deployed, suggesting a disturbing level of awareness. Unlike most elephants, which might react to provocation or territory loss, this one seemed to act out of sheer rage. Officials tried everything, firecrackers, fences, patrols, but nothing worked. After several failed capture attempts and dozens more lives lost, the government authorized a shoot-to-kill order. In December 2006, the elephant was finally brought down by a team of sharpshooters. The body was examined and confirmed to be the same animal based on old scars and tusk patterns. What caused the rampage? Some say it was years of habitat destruction. Others believe the animal had a history of abuse from logging operations. But whatever sparked it, the result was clear. One of the deadliest animal attacks by an elephant in modern history. And the fear it left behind in Assam hasn't fully faded even now. In the early 1820s, the quiet Swedish village of Gysinge found itself haunted by a predator unlike anything the region had seen before. A single gray wolf, young, healthy, and not rabid, began a wave of attacks that left residents stunned and terrified. Over just 3 months, this wolf reportedly injured or killed more than 30 people. Most attacks happened in broad daylight near homes and on well-worn paths. It didn't wait for nightfall, it didn't hide, it hunted with terrifying confidence. What made this case so unusual and so chilling was that the wolf didn't behave like a wild animal. It wasn't driven by starvation or desperation. Some believe it had been raised in captivity and later released, possibly after human mistreatment. If true, that might explain its lack of fear and its clear focus on people as prey. It walked directly toward targets, showed no hesitation, and once it struck, it rarely missed. Efforts to stop the wolf grew more intense with every attack. Entire communities set up watch rotations. Hunters tracked footprints through the snow, but the wolf was clever, always keeping just out of range. Eventually, a group of armed men caught and killed it after a bloody ambush. But by then, the damage had been done. Sweden had never recorded anything like it before or since. The Gysinge wolf remains the deadliest wolf on record in Scandinavia. A reminder that even in cold, quiet forests, danger can come in the form of something as seemingly ordinary as a wolf, but with instincts twisted in the wrong direction. Off the coast of Port Elizabeth, South Africa, something started happening that caught even scientists off guard. A pair of male orcas, dubbed port and starboard for their distinct bent dorsal fins, began preying on great white sharks. Not just chasing them, but eviscerating them with surgical precision. In some cases, only the shark livers were eaten. Organs rich in fat, the rest was left to drift. It was efficient, deliberate, and repeated over and over. As these attacks increased, great white sightings in the area dropped drastically. Entire marine ecosystems shifted. Shark tourism collapsed in nearby towns. But what made the case of port and starboard even more bizarre was the theory that this wasn't random. It was targeted. If orcas can identify, remember, and act on perceived threats with that level of planning, what else are they capable of? Today, port and starboard are still out there, silent, fast, and hunting with intent. Their story closes our list with a chilling thought. The ocean's most intelligent predator might also be the most unpredictable. That's about it. Which animal shocked you the most? Write in the comments. For more useful information, watch other videos.